television was in its infancy. Well, I thought it was just another job, so I took it. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine what would happen to us.
Behind the laughter, the chaos, and the seemingly effortless charm of I Love Lucy, Vivian Vance revealed that life on set wasn't always as cheerful as it looked on screen. While viewers saw perfectly timed jokes, warm friendships, and Lucy's wild antics getting everyone in stitches, the reality behind the studio lights was far more complicated and sometimes tense. Cast members didn't always get along, creative differences occasionally sparked arguments, and the pressure from producers to keep delivering hit after hit weighed heavily on everyone involved. Vance herself faced her own personal struggles while navigating the demands of being part of one of the biggest television sensations of the 1950s. Balancing the expectations of a nationwide audience with the intense schedules, constant rehearsals, and relentless spotlight wasn't easy. The cameras captured Ethel's exasperated sighs and perfectly timed reactions, but off-screen, Vance was dealing with challenges that were invisible to viewers at home. Anxiety, stress, and the need to constantly perform at peak level were realities she had to manage while making the magic of Ethel Mertz look effortless. Yet, paradoxically, those very pressures, the tension between cast members, the push from producers, and the personal struggles of the actors helped fuel the brilliance that would make the show legendary. Every argument, every behind-the-scenes disagreement, and every challenge the team faced created a layer of authenticity that translated directly to the screen. The bickering between Fred and Ethel, the awkward pauses, and the small, perfectly timed exasperations all felt real because the actors themselves had felt real tension in the room. In a way, the challenges didn't just make the work harder, they made the performances richer. They shaped a show that didn't just entertain millions of viewers, it created a cultural phenomenon. The combination of brilliant writing, iconic characters, and the subtle human moments that arose from behind-the-scenes struggles turned I Love Lucy into more than a sitcom. It became a timeless snapshot of comedy, friendship, and resilience. What audiences saw as effortless joy and comedic genius was, in reality, a tapestry woven from moments of real struggle, tension, and perseverance. And it's that hidden layer, the behind-the-scenes grit that rarely gets mentioned, that helped transform I Love Lucy into one of television's most beloved and enduring sitcoms. A show whose laughter still echoes across generations. Vivian Vance and William Frawley didn't get along. On screen, Fred and Ethel Mertz were the perfect comedic couple, bickering, teasing, and trading sarcastic quips that had millions of viewers laughing every week. Their chemistry felt effortless, as if they had spent decades perfecting the rhythm of a long marriage. But behind the bright studio lights and thunderous laughter of a live audience, the reality was far darker and far more fascinating. The actors bringing this legendary duo to life were locked in a quiet battle of wills, and their tension would unknowingly become one of the show's best-kept secrets. Vivian Vance, the lively and witty woman playing Ethel, was young, sharp, and full of energy. Her on-screen husband, William Frawley, was a grizzled veteran actor with decades of experience and a blunt, old-school demeanor. The script called for them to be a long-married couple who squabbled endlessly but ultimately cared for each other. But life off-camera told a very different story. Hollywood gossip later revealed the spark that ignited the tension. Vance had privately complained about being cast as the wife of a man she called an old coot. The remark inevitably reached Frawley, and just like that, the friendly veneer cracked. From that moment on, the air between them was thick with quiet resentment. Yet, neither let personal feelings ruin their work. They were consummate professionals. When the cameras rolled, they hit every comedic beat with flawless precision. The timing, the eye rolls, the sarcastic retorts, they delivered it all as if nothing had happened. Ironically, that friction may have been the secret sauce of their on-screen magic. Fred and Ethel's arguments felt sharper, funnier, and more authentic because they mirrored real-life tension. Their sarcasm wasn't just scripted, it was fueled by genuine irritation, giving viewers a comedic realism that's impossible to fake. The audience, of course, had no idea. They simply saw a legendary duo delivering some of television's most memorable comedy. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Vivian Vance and William Frawley navigated a complicated, strained relationship that added a hidden depth to every laugh. In the end, some of the most iconic moments in I Love Lucy were born not just from great writing, but from a real-life clash of personalities that made Fred and Ethel feel completely and irresistibly alive. Vivian Vance was made to look older on purpose. Every week, viewers tuning in to I Love Lucy saw Ethel Mertz as the practical, steady, slightly older friend who reluctantly got dragged into Lucy's outrageous schemes. With her dark hair, modest clothes, and no-nonsense demeanor, she was the perfect foil to Lucy's fiery, unstoppable energy. It all looked effortless, natural even, inevitable. But here's the shocker. The Ethel everyone loved on screen was nothing like the real Vivian Vance. Behind the cameras, Vivian Vance was young, stylish, and undeniably glamorous, a far cry from the frumpy neighbor millions adored. In fact, if she had appeared as herself, she might have outshone Lucille Ball in every scene. And in 1950s Hollywood, that was a problem the producers were determined to fix. They didn't just dress her differently, they completely transformed her. Her hair was darkened to create a muted, mature look that contrasted with Lucy's iconic red locks. Her wardrobe was carefully chosen to be plain, loose, and intentionally unflattering, stripping away any hint of the glamour she carried naturally. Even her makeup was subtly adjusted to soften her features and make her appear slightly older, reinforcing the idea that Ethel was the grounded, sensible counterpart to Lucy's wild energy. Every detail was designed for one reason, to make sure Lucille Ball remained the undeniable star of the show. Television in the 1950s obsessed over image, and the producers knew the balance between the characters had to be perfect. Lucy had to shine, Ethel had to support. And so a young, glamorous actress became a frumpy, endearing neighbor, her transformation invisible to millions of viewers. What's remarkable is how willingly Vivian Vance embraced it. She could have resented hiding her natural beauty, but instead she leaned into the character. Every sigh, every eye roll, every perfectly timed reaction became a masterclass in comedic support, allowing Lucy to soar while Ethel grounded the chaos. In the end, the meticulous crafting of Ethel's image did more than protect a star. It helped forge one of television's most beloved friendships. And decades later, when fans laugh at Ethel's exasperated expressions or admire her loyalty to Lucy, they're seeing a performance built on precision, creativity, and a hidden transformation that made the magic possible. Lucille Ball initially didn't want Vivian Vance on the show. When I Love Lucy first hit the airwaves, audiences were captivated by a friendship that seemed effortless. Lucy Ricardo, wild, unpredictable, and full of chaos, paired with her grounded, loyal neighbor Ethel Mertz. Their timing was flawless, their jokes landed with surgical precision, and together they became the heart and soul of one of television's earliest comedy hits. But behind the laughter, behind the applause, the story of how that legendary friendship came to life was far messier and far more fascinating than anyone watching at home could imagine. Believe it or not, at the very start, the show's star, Lucille Ball, reportedly didn't even want Vivian Vance playing Ethel. Television in the 1950s was ruthlessly protective of its leading stars. Image wasn't just important, it was everything. Ball had fought to become the unmistakable center of her show, the unstoppable force that audiences couldn't take their eyes off. The last thing she wanted, some insiders say, was another actress whose charisma or presence might steal the spotlight. Vivian Vance, with her natural confidence, talent, and charm, threatened that balance, not intentionally, but inevitably. Early reports suggest Ball quietly considered replacing her, worried that Ethel might overshadow Lucy. The tension between them was subtle, like a current running under the surface, but it existed, and both women felt the weight of expectations on every scene, every line, every punchline. Then something extraordinary happened once the cameras rolled. The friction melted into electricity. Lucy's wild energy collided perfectly with Ethel's grounded, exasperated reactions. Every gag landed harder, every joke felt sharper, and a rhythm emerged so natural it seemed destined. Off-camera tension gave way to mutual respect. Laughter became genuine. A friendship blossomed. What began as cautious professionalism soon turned into one of the most enduring partnerships in television history. By the time I Love Lucy became a phenomenon, Lucy and Ethel weren't just characters, they were an iconic duo whose comedic magic was built on talent, trust, and an unlikely bond forged under pressure. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest on-screen chemistry comes not from perfect harmony, but from navigating conflict and turning it into gold. Vance was fighting personal struggles behind the comedy. Every week, millions of viewers laughed until their sides ached watching Lucy's wild schemes unravel on I Love Lucy. The chaos was unstoppable, the jokes razor-sharp, and Ethel Mertz, rolling her eyes, groaning, yet always swept into the madness, felt perfectly cheerful, confident, and utterly in control. On screen, she was the calm anchor to Lucy's hurricane of hilarity. But behind the cameras, the reality was shockingly different. Vivian Vance, the brilliant woman giving life to Ethel, carried invisible burdens that no audience member could see. While millions laughed at her perfectly timed reactions and witty comebacks, off-camera, she battled anxiety, emotional strain, and moments of overwhelming pressure. At the height of the show's phenomenal success, the very spotlight that brought her fame also threatened to crush her. The irony was impossible to ignore. Here was a woman creating some of television's happiest moments while privately navigating storms that could have derailed her career, or worse, her spirit. Each episode demanded precision, energy, and flawless timing. Each joke had to land for a nationwide audience. For someone already grappling with inner turmoil, the stakes were staggering. There were times the stress became almost unbearable. Emotional breakdowns crept in, and she occasionally needed space to recover. And yet, as soon as the studio lights flickered on and the audience's laughter filled the room, something remarkable happened. Vivian Vance transformed. Her exhaustion vanished. Every expression, every perfectly timed pause, every subtle eye roll was delivered with effortless skill. The chemistry with Lucy wasn't just acting, it was a masterclass in trust, timing, and resilience. No one in the audience ever suspected the battles fought behind the curtain, because she never let them see it. That hidden dedication is what made Ethel so unforgettable. Comedy may look easy on screen, but the best performers know it demands control, precision, and unwavering professionalism, qualities Vance displayed scene after scene, even while carrying burdens that viewers never imagined. In the end, audiences saw only Ethel, the loyal, exasperated friend who made Lucy's misadventures unforgettable. What they didn't see was the extraordinary strength behind that laughter. A woman who turned private struggle into endearing brilliance, shaping some of the most iconic moments in television history. The cast sometimes used real props. Picture this: Lucy Ricardo in a swirl of chaos, frantically trying to keep up with one of her wild schemes, while Ethel Mertz stands beside her, rolling her eyes, sighing, and somehow keeping it together. The laughter is contagious, the timing flawless, and every scene feels alive. But here's the secret most viewers never noticed. Much of the hilarity came from one simple, genius trick. The props weren't always fake. In fact, some of the objects on set were real, and that choice completely transformed the performances. Take one of the most iconic kitchen scenes. Lucy and Ethel are handling what looks like a massive loaf of bread. It isn't a lightweight foam replica, it's real, enormous, and surprisingly heavy. Balancing it, maneuvering it, and reacting naturally to its weight required genuine effort. The result? Comedy gold. Every stumble, every exaggerated struggle, every incredulous glance was real because the bread was real. The audience wasn't just laughing at a joke, they were laughing at authenticity in motion. And it didn't stop there. In another unforgettable episode, Lucy had to wrestle with actual fish, slippery, smelly, and impossible to tame. No plastic props here. The unpredictability created chaos that couldn't be scripted. Fish flipping, actors flinching, props slipping. Every instinctive reaction, every flinch, every laugh, every exaggerated gesture was real, spontaneous, and unforgettable. This wasn't happenstance. The producers and writers knew that the magic of physical comedy came from interaction with reality. Fake props were safe, predictable, and often stiff, but real objects demanded improvisation, timing, and raw, authentic reactions. That subtle realism, the heft of the bread, the slippery wriggle of the fish, made the comedy feel lived in, immediate, and utterly relatable. Decades later, audiences can still feel that energy radiating from the screen. I Love Lucy wasn't just funny, it was meticulously crafted. And behind every perfectly timed gag, behind every laugh, was a carefully chosen real object, turning ordinary scenes into extraordinary moments of comedy. Sometimes the simplest tricks, the ones you don't even notice, are what make history. And in I Love Lucy, real props were that hidden spark of brilliance. The friendship between Lucy and Ethel was real. On screen, Lucy Ricardo and Ethel Mertz were inseparable, a whirlwind of laughter, chaos, and perfectly timed comedic genius. They schemed, stumbled, and celebrated together, creating one of television's most iconic friendships. But behind the bright studio lights and roaring audience laughter, the story of how that legendary bond formed was far more complicated and far more human than anyone could imagine. At first, Lucille Ball and Vivian Vance weren't the seamless duo we know today. Like any partnership forged under pressure, there were sparks of tension. Ball was the star, navigating the immense weight of expectation and fame. Vance was younger, glamorous, and fiercely professional, determined to hold her own in a world that demanded perfection. Off-camera, their interactions were sometimes strained. Trust and camaraderie didn't happen overnight. Then, the cameras rolled, and everything changed. The early friction faded as their instincts aligned. Vance had a sharp comedic timing that perfectly counterbalanced Ball's unpredictable, chaotic energy. She could set up a joke with the slightest glance, react with a sigh or an exasperated look, and make every scene feel alive. Their partnership became a rhythm, almost musical in its precision, a flow that only comes from true understanding, trust, and shared talent. And what started as professional respect slowly became something deeper. Behind the scenes, they laughed together, supported one another through challenges, and celebrated triumphs. Every rehearsal, every performance, every shared moment strengthened a friendship that would last a lifetime. That bond was more than heartwarming. It was the engine behind some of I Love Lucy's most unforgettable moments. It gave them the confidence to take risks, the trust to improvise, and the energy to make every gag land perfectly. Audiences weren't just watching two characters, they were witnessing the magic of real friendship unfolding in front of their eyes. By the time the show reached its peak, Lucille Ball and Vivian Vance weren't just co-stars, they were lifelong friends. Their chemistry, loyalty, and trust became the heartbeat of I Love Lucy, proving that sometimes the greatest television moments come from the people who bring them to life. So the next time you watch Lucy and Ethel in perfect sync, remember, every exasperated sigh, every perfectly timed pratfall, every comedic glance wasn't just acting. It was born from tension, transformation, resilience, and real friendship. The magic you see on screen was crafted in the cracks behind the scenes, in the moments that viewers never saw, in the stories that remain hidden but essential. That's the hidden genius of I Love Lucy, a show built not just on laughs, but on the heart, humanity, and brilliance of the people who made it possible. Because sometimes, the true story behind the laughter is even better than the comedy itself.